Here we go. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. We'll let everyone take a moment to get settled. Like we've got a great group joining. We'll just give one more minute. Let everybody get their speakers settled and ready to go. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. Good evening to everyone joining us today. Thank you so much, and welcome to this XtraMath presentation on school-wide math fluency programs. I'm Roy King, the Executive Director of XtraMath.org, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Dr. Amanda Slayton, who over 10 years as a math teacher and now a fluency consultant that we're really happy to have here today to talk about her personal experience. As we get started and I transition over to her, I've just got a few comments about logistics, and I've also put, I'll share a few polls so we can get a better idea of who's joining today, and we can better adjust our presentation. We again, we're really going, to get into the details of a school-wide plan and what that means, and all the different facets and components that you're going to have. Let's see, and the next poll that I've got is on the grades that you're supporting. It'll be wonderful to know that. And also this recording will be, or this presentation will be recorded and available for you to review and share later on. But again, thank you all so much for your time today. And with that, I will turn it over to Amanda.
Good afternoon. So I'm in Texas, so it's afternoon for me. And I have over 20 years of experience teaching mainly math for 6th, 7th, and 8th graders. And I got my PhD in integrating technology, learning, and psychology. So math fact fluency has always been really important to me. So today in the webinar, what we're going to talk about arithmetic fluency briefly, cognitive load theory, and we're going to talk about some of the research that has been done in these areas. We'll talk about the school-wide plan, building it, some core components, and RTI framework, integration, and then of course we'll have time for some questions and hopefully answers. So we'll talk about arithmetic fluency. When we talk about arithmetic fluency, it's not just simply math fact fluency, knowing your math facts. It encompasses a lot more than that. So it's not just strictly rote memorization. It's fluency with understanding. So we want the students to know the meanings of the relationships between the numbers. We want them to be able to apply strategies and demonstrate flexibility. And finally, after all that, we want the students to have automaticity where they can just say 9 times 7 is 63 and it comes automatically to them. Fluency with understanding, that phrase comes from McNeil, who recently wrote an article that encompasses arithmetic fluency. So arithmetic fluency goes beyond memorization. We'll talk about cognitive load theory. So cognitive load can happen when working memory reaches its limits, and that generally happens when there are too many steps that are needed to solve a problem. And if you think about it, especially when the older elementary and the junior high kids, when they start working on math problems, the math problem is not the fluency. It's not 9 times 7 or 3 times 5. It is something else that supports that. So every time they have to construct or even use a calculator to figure out what that math fact is, then they're adding additional steps to that problem. And then those additional steps can cause cognitive overload. So when students have arithmetic fluency, they can focus on the relationship between the variables, whatever variables that are in the problem. They can reflect on what the problem's meaning. What is the problem really asking? I know a lot of times, I'll ask the students, what are you trying to find? What's the problem asking you to do? And so they can reflect on what the problem's meaning. What is in there that's not needed, and what is in there that you need, and what is not in there that you're supposed to find. And then they can apply mathematical principles rather than worrying about the calculations. So they don't have to worry about the calculations because that comes automatically. And so we want to prevent those students from getting overloaded and getting frustrated because they're trying to figure out the math fact when that's not even part of the problem. So that is something that they are supposed to already automatically know, especially when they get up into junior high in the fifth and sixth graders. So just a little bit on the research. The National Assessment of Education Progress, or the nation's report card, in 2022, which is their most recent study, said in fourth grade, so for fourth graders, 43 states and jurisdictions performed below the NAEP basic in mathematics. And then in eighth grade, it was even more, it was 48 states and jurisdictions. Also, it was the largest drop since the national assessment had been going on since 1990. So you think about it, it's the lowest drop even during COVID years. My study that I did, we used XtraMath with 6th and 7th grade students. And what we found out was that those students that had just addition fluency, there was a significant predictor of their math score. It was like 21%. And if you can increase a math score in your state testing by 21%, then why would you not do that? And what was really interesting is that those students that showed that percentage increase, they were practicing using the 2-second threshold, but those students using the 6-second threshold, there was no increase for them. So it was not significant for them. Powell also did a research and with high school students and algebra students. And so with the algebra students, what he found out was that Math fact fluency was the second predictor for algebra excellence, second only to rational number fluency. So those are related. And so they suggested even for high school students and beyond to have that fluency practice for algebra students. I know I've taught algebra, and it's really hard for those students that don't know their math facts to factor. You give them a problem, it's like, okay, I need two numbers. You need to multiply them together to get 15, but when you add them, you get 8. And I would have to give them a multiplication chart so they could find 15, and then they could see, do they add up to 8? And then Alan and Lyell, I really like this statement that they had. They said, if you know that automaticity matters for student success in higher levels of mathematics, we must find a way to support that. So we must find a way to do that. In other words, if you're not, you should be. You should be doing that. So we'll talk about a school-wide plan versus not having a school-wide plan. So do you have a school-wide fluency plan? If you don't have one, there's no guidelines for your teachers, for your curriculum. Experts, we were called math coaches when I was teaching. There's no guidelines, there's no expectations. There's inconsistent implementation because there's no guidelines and no expectations. And then there's no accountability, and there's no accountability because there's no guidelines and no expectations. And it could potentially lead to achievement gaps for those students that struggle. And it also says that fluency is not really important. And we know that it is important. So if you have a school-wide plan, you have clear guidelines. Everybody knows the expectations. It's consistent throughout your classes and with the teachers and with the grade levels. And you have student, teacher, and parent ownership because that's part of the plan. Part of the plan is you let your parents know, you let your students know why this is important. Why are we doing this? You can identify those tier 2 students quicker when you have a plan, because part of your plan is that you look at the data and you see, you notice who is struggling, who is not struggling. And it elevates fluency from a chore, because a lot of kids believe and even a lot of teachers do believe that fluency is a chore. And so it elevates it into something that we need to do, that it's good for you to know it. It helps you to know it. And it also gives you a framework for data analysis so you can go back and identify those students. And so if you don't have a plan, it's very difficult to measure and know and see who is doing well and who is not doing well and who are those borderline students. So the components of a school-wide plan, there's 4 things that generally that we want to do with a school-wide plan. We want to have explicit instruction strategies. We want varied and engaging practice, timed assessments, and progress monitoring. We'll talk about each one of those. So explicit instructional strategies, that includes things that your teachers are already doing. Step-by-step problem solving, using manipulatives, using visual aids, and then decomposition and grouping. Now, decomposition is when you take a problem like 7 plus 8 and you divide it into 7 plus 3 plus 5. And then you have your 7 plus 3, which is 10, then plus your 5, which is 15. And then the grouping, if you have a problem like 6 or 7 plus 6 plus 3 plus 4, then you can group these into 7 plus 3 and 6 plus 4. Now, hopefully your teachers are doing that, because using those known facts, 10, 7 plus 3 is 10, 6 plus 4 and 10, helps them to develop that number sense and how numbers are related to each other, and they become more flexible in their calculations. Varied and engaging practice. So first of all, we want daily practice. There's the decomposition that I was talking about earlier. Varied and engaging practice. We want daily practice every day. You should be doing something every day, even as the students get older. Even with my 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, we did daily math fact fluency practice. Some kind of games. You have things on paper, hands-on, digital tools, and of course some adaptive online programs. So all of those. So when they're engaged in practice, they move beyond memorization because they're working with the numbers. So they're not always being drilled on it, but they're working with the numbers in various ways. And it helps to provide them a deeper understanding of numbers and how they relate to each other. So when you have varied and engaging practice, when you're doing things like 9 times 7, then they know that that is, 7 groups of 9. Hopefully they could visualize, they know what that means. But if you're just drilling 9 times 7, 9 times 7 before they get that foundation, then they don't really know what 9 times 7 means. They might know it's 63, but they might not know what it means. Okay, timed assessments. There's been a lot of discussion over timed assessments on whether or not it's a valuable tool, and it is a valuable tool. You need to have timed assessments because it helps provide retrieval practice because they're given a time constraint. And so you want to give them a few seconds to, what's 3 times 5? And so they can retrieve it. And you want to give them a time constraint where they don't always are going to go 5, 10, 15 and count on their fingers. You want that to become automatic. And also with the timed assessments, they're low stakes. It's just practice. It's not for a test, and it's just practice. So it is a valuable tool that should be introduced after the students are already fairly accurate with practicing with visuals. Maybe they're doing some retrieval practice. Maybe they're doing some derived facts, but they can figure it out. And so we want to go from them figuring it out to it being automatic, and they will be able to do that easier once you have a timed assessment that is not stressful. And so they need to be fairly accurate before you start basically drilling them on what they are. And you don't want them to feel like they're being drilled, that they're just practicing. And so timed assessments can be very valuable. McNeil, that I talked about before, had a very good research article talking about the timed assessments and how important they are and how they fit into a school-wide plan. And that is, yes, you do need that. And you have to have some kind of retrieval practice where it gives them a time constraint where they know that they don't have all day to figure out that problem. And the last part of your core program is progress monitoring. You want to measure and monitor the progress of your students and of your classes and of your entire school. And you want to review those school usage reports. XtraMath has school usage reports where you can see how is everybody doing? How are the students doing? How are the classes doing? And you can identify students, and you can, by looking at the reports, you can see which ones are improving. They should be improving and getting more of those facts that are automatic, and those students that are not, then you can address those. And also you want to troubleshoot, because sometimes there's problems. I know I was in one school where I had a classroom where if you sat in a certain area of the classroom, your computer would not connect. You would have to go out in the hall, connect, and then come back in. And so things like that. So fortunately, we solved that. But things like that come up, and sometimes teachers don't think about it until later. But if you meet regularly and you ask those questions and say, "Hey, are you having any connection problems?" Anything like that? Those things like that they don't happen all the time. It didn't happen every day. It only happened sometimes. And so you can get that taken care of. And of course, you want to celebrate. You should always celebrate those students that are doing well, and encourage them and say you've been doing awesome. You've completed addition, and we're going to celebrate that. And now you're on subtraction, or you've completed multiplication, and now you're on division, and you're doing such a good job. And so we have to remember to celebrate. Now, how does a school-wide arithmetic fluency fit into your RTI framework? Now, your RTI framework, tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. So tier 1 is your core instruction. Your tier 1, if you don't have 80 to 90% of your students being successful with math fact fluency, then you should probably reconsider your core instruction and what's going on. On the average, about 15% are special education students, and then 1.2 to 3% are 504 students. So I'm not saying that all the special education or 504 students, are going to be tier 2, but there's a possibility that they would be with additional students that for some reason or another they don't have the foundations before, so the core instruction is not enough for them. And so 80 to 90% is a good benchmark to figure out how our core instruction is going, and do 80 to 90% of our kids, are they fluent with their math facts? After teaching 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, the schools that I were at, that was not true. It was not 80 to 90% were fluent. It was 80 to 90% were not fluent. And from talking with teachers at some of the conferences that we've been to, they're finding similar results. And so you need to take a look at your core instruction, which should be a school-wide plan. Now, tier 2, those are for targeted small group instruction. You can identify those students through, a lot of teachers know which students are not getting it. And sometimes to catch those students that might slip through, you can look at those reports, and if they're not progressing as quickly as they should, then you can do some tier 2 targeted instruction for those students. Maybe they need some more manipulative practice. Maybe they need some more games, some more fun things. Maybe they just need just a little bit more practice with flashcards. And so in a group, tier 2 is usually within a group. Now, tier 3, I guess those that are not successful with tier 2 with the targeted instruction, then we go to a tier 3, which is a one-on-one. And again, those reports that have shown which students are not being successful with those core instructions, then you've tried tier 2 and we're going on to tier 3. Maybe they need more practice time. Maybe 10 minutes a day on XtraMath is not enough. Maybe they need another 10-minute session. Maybe there needs some alternative teaching methods. Maybe you haven't used a teaching method with those students, and it's gonna help that one student. So the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 fit right into, or the school-wide fluency fits right into the tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 instructions. So hopefully that's not a whole lot of information. Are there any questions? Any questions about the school-wide fluency plan or about XtraMath? Because XtraMath is the math fact fluency program, as you know, that 10 minutes a day that adapts to each student. Okay, there is a question on the reports. There are reports. I don't have a picture of the reports. Roy, do you have a picture of the reports? There are various reports.
Yeah,
There's
let me pull
one.
those up in the background, Amanda. Thank you for checking on that. And I've got another just let me invite Mariana, who's got a question as well. We'll take that question and then give me a moment to get some reports available, and then I'll come back.
Okay.
Uh, Marianne, if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Okay, so we've been on XtraMath at our school we just hit our 2-year mark. Matter of fact, I just renewed yesterday. And we are making progress. I think everybody's kind of in a groove, and I think the kids we're doing a lot of the things that you're saying. We are doing a lot of things, including a lot of reward this year. And we do go all the way through 8th grade.
Okay.
Sadly to say, we graduated 20% of our 8th graders last year who did not pass it, which as the math coach, I was like, that's not happening again. And we're
Right.
already further along than that this year. We will graduate 100% of our 8th graders this year passing. What I'm struggling with is how do we educate the parents on the importance of fluency? We're getting some headway on it, but I just can't seem to get parents to buy in on it. And I'm struggling with that.
That that is hard because I did a lot of intervention, and with intervention I have smaller classes, and I have basically more time where I can talk to the parents one-on-one and explain to them that, the reason is like, why are they doing addition in 8th grade math? Because I had 8th grade intervention. And I said they have to have those fluency to be able to do the higher level complex mathematics. And so, I don't know, I don't really know what you can do other than, because if you have like a parent meeting, you're going to have very few parents show up, probably.
Right.
They, but you can do that, and when you send things home, especially at that age level, a few of them will get the information, but a lot of them won't. They won't see it. And so I guess it was just going to have to be just to think of different ways that you
Well,
can
we can see it. We do
inform.
our first graders, we do a reading and math fluency meeting at the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And when I did that meeting this year, really what I did was I went to the state standards. We're in the state of Arkansas,
Mhm.
and showed them what the state standard was and how their
Yeah.
kids were not, how the kids were not there. And I can see, and I just don't know. I think maybe it's just going to take several years so we can get these first graders, and then I do it again and I have another set to buy into it. But the parent buy-in is really a struggle.
Well, it,
To,
it is, and it's really hard because there is, if you can't read, it's like, oh my goodness, you can't read, we got to do something about it. But if you can't do math, it's like, that's okay, you're not going to need it anyway.
we'll
And
use calculator.
yeah,
That's
you just
what
use a
my parents said.
calculator, and they don't understand that, you have to have that. And I think that attitude has been getting worse throughout the years. And I do think it's going to take a while to get that attitude changed, because it's just like the sight words. When you're reading, you have to know those sight words to read. It makes reading so much easier. Well, the same thing with math. If you know your math facts, it makes math so much easier.
Right. Yeah, we're on the same page. But
Yeah, it's a great question, and one I know a lot of educators struggle with. Um, I can share two things I just wanted to share, Amanda, to make sure everyone is aware of is be sure to look at XtraMath support, and there's details on how to access and interpret the school usage reports, as well as the monthly student reports. And we're working on making these more readable, making them more easy to interpret and sort of understand the trends that are coming out. But all of the information that you would need on, school, grade, being able to interpret, fluency scores and progress by grade level and et cetera. This is just for one classroom, but it shows you the sort of information that is available at a very granular level across the school.
And at least with this one also, you can tell as you're looking at it, which teachers are using the program. What are they doing? With other things like the manipulatives and things like that that you ask them to do. Sometimes you know or you don't know what they're doing. But with this one, you can look at it and you can say, oh, well, I see your class hasn't been on XtraMath all week. What are you doing instead? Or why aren't you on? Are you having some problems with it? And then also there's also student reports that the teacher can see right away. I used to have mine up while the students were doing it, and it gives you little icons to let you know how they're doing. And because they'll say, Miss Layton, I'm done. And I say, well, this is saying you're not done. And, and then let me update it. And then sometimes they're actually done and sometimes they're not done. I'm like, oh, well, I have another one to go. So here's some of the reports here. This is the one is the student report. And then it'll have their name by it, and it like the 46 on this one, they're 46% through multiplication. And then it gives you a little graph to see their trend. You want their trend to be going up, that student's going up. And then you can see how they're working on it. They have the different icons for, you want them to be green because that says that they've I think it's 90% that they have answered correctly within the threshold. These are 3 second, and then the yellow is like they're 75%. They've answered 75% of them correctly within the threshold. The gray means that they didn't finish, and so you can go back and say, hey, why didn't you finish today? And then you can say, oh, look at you, you've got 2 greens right in a row. And so I would always comment and on what they were doing. And it's like, oh, you got red today. What happened? And then you can look and see for every single problem that they answered, did they answer correctly? Did they answer within the time? Or did they with the little, what is that little time thing? The blue one, yeah, that one. That one means that they timed out. Are they sitting there waiting for the answer? Because you'll have students that will do that, and so those are just good things that you can just look at a glance and see. Well, this student is doing really well. It's what happened here? Did you get distracted? And one teacher said, well, it's like maybe they got up and went to the restroom. And they timed out, and was like, well, I didn't let them go to the restroom when they were on here. So, maybe they had an emergency or something. But I like this. I use this one a lot for my classes and just for my kids and looking at it. And I also noticed the students can also see there's like a grid, and it shows which ones that they have already completed. And I've seen a lot of students look at their grid and see what they've done and what's coming up and how they've done on that. The matrix, that's what it's called. And so the students can see the matrix also, and the students can also see how many trophies they have, because they get trophies, and so they can also see their trophies. So there's the matrix, and I've seen a lot of students will look at their matrix to see how they're doing.
Amanda, I just wanted to make sure you saw another question in the Q&A about working with teachers to make sure that they're able to allocate the 10 minutes a day, within their very limited time block that they have. Maybe they don't do it every day, but have you, in working with other teachers and kind of, trying to share XtraMath, have you come up or found anything that works well in sort of ensuring that they either in class or at home sort of make sure the students are getting the usage and dosage that they need?
Well, when I did it for the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that I had, that was the first thing they did when they came in. Of course, they switched classes, so they knew very first thing they got their laptop out and they got on XtraMath, and that way I was able to take attendance and deal with anything that went on at the beginning of class. I had some teachers, they do it as part of stations, and one of their stations was an XtraMath station. I had one of my, we had 8th graders we had one class of 8th graders that did algebra, and she assigned it as homework, and she would give them extra credit because most of them were already pretty fluent, but they had some, that needed that practice. And I was trying to think, and then some had like Fluency Fridays, where every Friday they got that was their XtraMath day, and that was mainly for older kids, junior high and even high school kids. So as math centers do it right when you come in, there was also some schools where they had the entire school every day at 10 o'clock. They would do XtraMath. That was their XtraMath time. So every day at 10 o'clock, all the students were on XtraMath. And so I thought, I had never heard of that before. I thought that was a really cool idea. I was looking at
Or excuse me, I was just sharing a slide from our previous webinar that you mentioned that, and kind of coming back to the parents as well, of trying to get them involved in the broader effort. And again, both of those may, one may be more receptive than the other. So finding, the best foothold.
there's a question with consistency. That's really hard because sometimes some teachers are going to be very good at doing it every day, just like you ask them to. And other teachers, for one reason or another, they're not going to do it like you want them to. And, other than just having conversations or just, checking on them every day, it's hard for that consistency for some teachers. I even had that situation when I was doing my research, and we had 6th grade teachers and 7th grade teachers that agreed, and the superintendent was like, yes, we're going to do this. 7th grade teachers were awesome. 6th grade teachers, not so much. And so it's just the consistency. One of the things that you can do, they get a weekly report that's sent to them. Is when I was doing it, and it was a weekly report of all their students, and you may want to just have them send that weekly report to you. That could be another way. It's like, oh, if I have to send that report, then my students better be on it. Okay, it looks like Bob had a question. What are your thoughts on having a central platform to a school-wide program such as XtraMath, but then allowing teachers to use other things around this central platform? Absolutely. XtraMath should be part of your school-wide plan. You should be doing those other things. You should having them doing games. And one of the things I've been tutoring, and I have this one little girl she's struggling. And so we play a game at the end of her tutoring session. She always asks, are we going to play? I think it's called penguin multiplication or something like that. And it's just because it has a penguin on the paper. And we roll dice and we multiply the two dice. It's just regular dice up to 6. We're working up to 6. We'll roll those, and then she will and give her time to construct those facts. And then it's like tic-tac-toe, but we get 4 in a row. And she'll put her marker on, there'll be is 4 times 3, it's 12. And then there'll be several 12s. And then she has to kind of strategy to figure out how she can get 4 in a row. So things like that. I am a big proponent of games and activities and manipulatives and anything that they can do using those numbers. I think it's great. Roy, there's a question about awakening. I did not use awakening when I used XtraMath.
Oh, great. Let's see. And I'm glad, we also believe that awakening is, a good complement. The curriculum aligned games provide more, opportunities to practice specific skills, and even those beyond fact fluency.
See, the question is, oh, they're
The
getting
question is
frustrated.
about, how they can access it, and some students who are finished want to be able to go right in to XtraMath or to Awakenings, and some teachers want to be able to assign specific games. So that is a great question, and something we're working on actively at the moment, and will definitely be available sometime in the next year, in early 2026, hopefully after the winter break, so that students will be able to go, if you opt them in at your discretion, to be able to log in and go straight into the games.
Roy, is also a question on the assessments. Can you give an assessment over certain facts?
Great question. Also something that we're looking at, but not at the moment. The only controls you have are what we call the difficulty level. And so the matrix, as Amanda said, in some cases, like beginner addition is a very small set of facts. Whereas the extended division set is, our largest and most comprehensive. But we're not yet able to segment out specific strategies or specific groups of facts. But thank you for the input.
And then I'm going to love music, so beats headphones are number 1. Second off, sports coffee. Have at least.
All right. Well, it looks like we've got a lot of great questions. We'll leave it open for a moment if anybody else has a question or wants to raise their hand. Otherwise, I would just like to say thank you to Amanda and everyone else for attending this webinar.
And then just some while we're waiting, just some things to think about. Do you have a school-wide plan for arithmetic fluency? And if you do have a plan, do you follow it? Is it supported? Is you used? Do your teachers follow it? And does it include the things like we talked about, games, paper practice, and hands-on tools, manipulatives, digital resources? Does it include all those things? And do you also have an adaptive online program? Because as you know, XtraMath, when the students sit down to XtraMath, not all the students are doing the same problems. They're doing the problems that they need. So if they already know what 4 times 5 is, they're not going to see that one very much. They're going to see the other ones that they need to practice on. And also timed practice is important. I know you've probably heard a lot of things about timed practice, but it is important and a valuable tool. XtraMath also uses spaced repetition where it'll show a problem and then it'll wait a while and then it'll show that problem back. And so that spaced repetition is important for retrieval. And then also immediate feedback is real important because when you do a whole worksheet full of math facts and then you go back through and see which ones you missed, it's not immediate. And so with immediate feedback, they can kind of think, oh, yes, that's that one. That, you know, I got that mixed up with something else, or yay, I got it right. And so those are important things to consider. Let's see.
All right. Well, Amanda, it was a great summary. Final question about the progression path. And when someone is done with 6-second addition, subtraction,
I would say depending on their age, if they're done with the 6-second, if they're like a first or second grader and they're done with addition and subtraction, with the 6-second, I would probably move them down to the 3-second before they start on multiplication. Just because at the 6-second, it's not automatic yet. They don't have the automaticity yet. If they can get it within 3 seconds, then it's automatic. And so if you have the time, I would move them to 3 seconds after they finish the 6-second one. And it may be like, you know, tell them this is more of a challenge. You have 3 seconds. You have to be really quick. And that's what I would do. Now, if they were older and they finish the 6-second and they're in 3rd or 4th grade and they need that multiplication and division, but I would probably go ahead and move them on to multiplication just so they could get that practice. But again, every student is different, so you kind of have to take that into consideration also.
But thank you for that, Amanda. Just to reinforce, we do believe that the 3-second, threshold is the ideal fluency metric to work towards, and students need to build, towards that ideally before they're expected to build fluency in multiplication or division. But with that, we're at time, and I just wanted to say I appreciate everybody's time coming here today and spending it with us, and thank you for your support of Math Fluency. We will share this information shortly online and look forward to seeing you all again at our next demo.